this is Trinesha Cottrell, and today I wanted to talk about blocking blessings. So I know from the title you're probably like, okay, we know this is about people blocking their blessings. What else could you say about it? Okay, so what made me want to talk about blocking blessings is because, I hear from time to time because I will get in my own way. I don't know if I'm alone on that limb, but I will get in my own way. And God will be trying to bless me with something. He'll be trying to introduce people into my life. He will be sending me blessing after blessing after blessing. And sometimes I get beside myself. Sometimes I get in my own way. And I'll be like, either it's not that I'm not trying to accept it, but because in the past I've been making so many mistakes or I've done so many things wrong, sometimes I have to catch myself because I'll end up unintentionally blocking my own blessing. God will send, this guy who seems like a decent person, and it'll be like, oh, like I'll feel myself put the walls up, and then it's like, God's like, I done sent you. And I'm like, okay, God, I hear what you're saying. I didn't even do it intentionally. And he's like, do you trust me or no? Like, are you really going to trust me? Because I'm not like other people. I'm not like you. Like sometimes when we make bad decisions in our life, we kind of feel like, can we really trust ourselves? Like, after all the things that done wrong, can I really trust my decisions? That's the thing that I think about sometimes when I think about getting into a relationship or making like big decisions. And I'll lean on God, and sometimes God won't say anything because he wants me to make the choice. And then he will just continue to walk ahead of me making a path. Unless it's like a hard no, or unless God is just, sometimes it's a decision that I need to make in my life. And it's not about like, I wouldn't say a job for sure, but God could be saying, okay, stay in this position because I need you to do these things. And I'll be like, okay. Or if I'm getting ready to go or do something and I'm like, okay, God, they opened up this position. Should I take it? Or should I be doing this or dating this person or whatever else? And God will say nothing. And a lot of the times is when God says nothing, it means wait, don't do anything, or in my life when it's a smaller decision, God will be wanting me to make that decision for myself, because the best place in God's, whatever that you could be in is him trusting you to make a decision, because that means that he thinks that you're faithful enough to be able to handle it. He thinks that you're strong enough to be able to handle it. And sometimes I'll be like, okay, God, I just feel so weak in this moment. And he's like, look at how far you come. And I have to really think about it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like if that was me 10 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago, I would have definitely not have made that decision. Like, I'm going to tell you this story. Hopefully it doesn't offend anybody or anything like that. But so I went to this thing yesterday. And as I was there, I was kind of like, the only time my phone goes off is when I'm doing these videos. Like, my phone is dry as I don't know what all day, every day. But every time I'm in my purpose, I'm doing something, it's like blowing up. I'm like, really? Like, the adversary always be working. And so, and so I so I was at this thing yesterday. That don't make no sense. So I was at this thing yesterday, and I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's like right there. So, and then it's got the lights and stuff. So it's all right. I mean, that's enough. Let me make sure it's not okay. It's not an emergency. Somebody just keep on texting me. Okay. And so, and so I was at this thing yesterday, and I kind of like, when I went by myself, and I didn't realize it was a thing for couples. And so I was kind of like, I mean, I didn't invite someone else to go, but it was like me and like one of my friends or something. It wasn't like, a couple thing. And so as we were there, like everybody there, I guess, got the memo except for me. And so I was thinking it was just going to be like we learn dance like I usually do, like, because when I went there in the past, they would teach us a dance and we would just do it. The only time there would be like coupling is if there was like a waltz or a foxtrot or, some other type of dance, salsa, or something tango. But tango is like one of those ones that you learn eventually. It's not really like, usually if you're a beginner, they might show you a few steps actually. They'll show you like the mamba and stuff like that. And so, so I'm in the class and I just was like, oh wow, it's all couples. And we were all rotating and everything. And as I sat there, I had like a moment like, oh my gosh, I had no idea this was going to be a couples thing. And then like one of the people that was there kind of like, they didn't really single me out, but they were just like, oh yeah, when you do this, and let me just let me just give you a whole PSA, public service announcement. I am horrible at dancing. I love to dance off rhythm, everything else. Like I can do a couple moves. I know a couple dances, like, the regular line dances that you do at cookouts and stuff like that. I know that. And I can do a good two-step, but I am not a dancer for real. Like, okay, I did ballet for 2 years, but that's besides the point. That's different. That's like you're learning a technique and you're getting better at that. That's not like freestyle. And so like when I'm learning new steps, new dances, things like that, it's hard. Like, I mean, I wouldn't say hard. Like at the beginning, I really, really struggle. And then towards the end of the class, I kind of get it for the most part. And so the instructor kind of like singled me out, which made me feel crappy. And then I almost gave up. I almost was like, okay, well, I don't want to do this anyways. I almost had that type of attitude and was ready to just walk out and just be like, forget it. I don't even care. Like I could just, I don't have to be here. In my head, like for like a minute. Well, it was really like a good 10 seconds, but I had that thought for like that quickly and then it kind of went away. But I was just like, I don't even have to be here. Like I'm having this conversation by myself. Like the instructor's going ahead doing their own thing. I'm doing my own thing. And everybody's in a couple and I'm just kind of like, okay. Like I gotta share, I gotta switch out with other people. Like I didn't bring a person, so it's like, it was just kind of like a little awkward, but and then I kind of felt like a little left out. So I was like, and then I was like, no, this is fine. As long as I'm learning this dance and, I'm trying it, it's good. And I was about to give up. Adversary almost had me and had me going down that downward spiral of cynicism and, the negative self-talk and everything else. And I was like, no, I got this. I might not know how to do this yet, but if I continuously do it over and over again, I will become better at it. She bang gong bay. That's the only phrase that I know from Tai Chi. And it just means that if you study something efficiently, you can learn it in half the time. And so I just needed to put forth an effort and be willing to do it with everything that I got. I just needed to be willing to be intentional, to be focused on it, to be doing the things that I needed to do. And I was not about to give up, regardless of how the instructor acted, regardless of how anyone else in the class saw me stumble over my own 2 feet. It didn't matter what happened. I was going to get this. Okay. And so I really had a moment and God was like really talking to me like, look at how far you come. Because if this was 2.5, 3 years ago, I would have just gave up. I probably would have walked out of the class and I wouldn't have kept doing it. That's just me being real. And sometimes we really don't realize how far we've come. And we kind of have to take a moment to really take in how far we really are. And we will put this standard, this kind of like high goal that we have, this big hairy goal, and everything. And it's great to have those. But also while you're in the journey, you need to appreciate the journey as well. You need to appreciate the little wins so that you can be motivated to do more. Like when I did the snowball method with Dave Ramsey, I was for those of you that don't know, I took out a student loan. And so I started listening to Dave Ramsey and I was like, oh my gosh, it's impossible. Like I had a car and I had the student loans and I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to pay this off. And I started Googling, like, how do you pay off debt? How do you, I was like, I don't want to be like, I know people are saying this is normal, but this is not how I want to live. And the money that I was making from the job was like barely enough. And the student loans, people wanted you to pay whatever you had left over in your check. So that means that at the end of the month, if I got hungry, if I needed gas, if something else happened, I would have $0 and they could really care less. And what they did is they sectioned my student loans into 6 sections. I mean, 6 different sections or groups instead of one whole group. And that's how they get you, because it'll say 6%, which you think when you're in school, oh, that's not a lot. But 6% times 6 is 36%. Nobody wants to pay 36% on student loans to pay back, And then if you are paying the minimum, it's just going to keep accruing over time and you're never going to pay it off, which is kind of like their thing, you know? And so as I started researching, I found Dave Ramsey. I started going smallest to largest. And because God is good, first off, and because, they sectioned it in groups, little did they know God was going to bless me with that. It was like what somebody else meant for evil, God meant it for good. And I'm not getting on student loan people or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, God turned it into a blessing real quick. Like I started being intentional with my finances. I started budgeting. I started really focusing in on how I was going to be a good steward of the money that God had already given me. And if I needed to get another job, if I needed to do other things in my life, I was willing to do whatever it took to make sure that I could pay down those loans. And so God, in a season where I think COVID had started or something like that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to focus in. I'm not going out. I'm not eating out. Dave Ramsey always says rice and beans, beans and rice. Like, I didn't do the whole rice and beans because rice bloats me, but I did do like a lot of hot dogs and I did a lot of like, what else was the other thing? Eggs. Like eggs was something that I would boil eggs. I would scramble them. I would do like omelets every morning. I'd get like mushrooms. Back then, mushrooms were like $1, sometimes $1.19. So it really wasn't expensive. And I would mix that with the eggs, or I would get like onions, and then the onions would be in everything. So I would have like, I would get a bag of frozen veggies, and I would take the frozen veggies, put them in the pot with like, olive oil or whatever, sear it up, and then I would pour the eggs over it so I could have an omelet every morning. And then for dinner, I would have like a boiled egg and, whatever else. Like I would eat chicken a lot of chicken because that was the cheapest meat ever, So I would buy like this giant bag that was like $4 then, and it came with like, I think 2 legs and 2 breasts and leg quarters and thighs. And I think altogether it was enough chicken for me to eat probably chicken for 2 weeks for $4. So, but you can't do that now, but that's what I did back then. So I was really intentional about it. And I was praying to God. I was like, God, I don't want to live like this. Like there has to be another way. I don't want this debt on my neck. It really felt like a chain around me. It felt like a fetter on me. And for those of you that don't know, that's like the shackles that are around you. And so I just felt like I needed to get out. Like I didn't know what I had to do, but I needed to break loose, And so after praying to God and being intentional with my finances, God was like, save everything. Just whatever you're doing, just save it and save it. And I was listening to Dave Ramsey, and he was saying something like, okay, you got this money sitting in the bank. Why aren't you just paying off that debt? Like just pay off, whatever else it is, especially if it's the same amount as whatever else. Like once you get your emergency fund, your $1,000 emergency fund or whatever else, just go full force at the debt, smallest to largest. And a lot of people would say, why don't you go by the APR, or whatever else? But it makes sense because psychologically, once you start winning, you want to continue to win. And so I started going, I had enough saved to pay off the first group, which was the lowest one. And when I paid it off, it like lit something in me. And before I did that though, the shutdown was starting to happen, and that's when they came out with the 0% APR until further notice. And while I was saving and being obedient to God, God was looking out for me. And literally, he gave me everything I needed to be able to pay this thing off. Like, if it wasn't for the 0% APR, if it wasn't for me not having to pay anything during that time, like the money that I was going to pay towards student loans, people would say, why don't you just pay it anyways? Because I didn't have to. And so, mind your business. Just kidding. No, but so what I did was I kept chunking any extra cash and the cash that I would put towards that payment and towards the payment for my car. I put it in my savings or whatever, or in my checkings. And then after a period of time, I was like, okay, well, wow, Dave Ramsey has said, why don't you just pay the whole amount if you got it, And I was like, okay, well, let me go ahead and pay this one off. And when I paid it off, it just made me feel so good. Like psychologically, I just felt like, oh wow, I could do this. Like at first, I was being intentional, but it just kind of felt impossible. And even though I was praying and I knew God was going to look out for me, I was just like, I don't know, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And that was before I rededicated my life to God. God was looking out for me like this. This is how good God is. And so I just, once that fire got lit and I paid off the first thing, I paid, yeah, I paid off the first thing, and then I went for the second one. And then I waited like I think a month or two. Was it a month or two? A month or two. I paid off the third one. And by the time I paid off the third one, what I owed on the car was lower than the two other student loan groups. So what I did was, in that December, I paid off the car. So the car was completely paid for. No more, car debt or whatever else. And so I had the two loans left, and I was saving and saving and saving, and I was just any extra money. I mean, the house, I get rid of every single application. Like there were free applications for TV, like Pluto TV and stuff like that. I would literally watch like old reruns of like Three's Company and stuff like that. A lot of y'all young people don't know what that is. I only know because I grew up around my grandparents, and that's something that we just watched in the house. Okay, so so I would watch like stuff like that would come on, and it would be like old maybe Law and Order episodes, or if it wasn't that, because I only watched it like every once in a while. I didn't really watch a lot of TV during that time. And I know that sounds crazy because I was so used to having all the applications that I wanted, or cable before then. And so I really was so serious about it. I was like, look, these applications may be $5.99, but that's $5.99 that's going to go towards my debt. I was for real about it. And I was like, do I really need this? Is this benefiting me? Because I'm spending extra time that I could be working or doing something else. So I don't need it. And the family struggled a little bit, but but they were good. And so everything was fine. And the last, like, I think January, I was close to the amount that I needed to pay off the fifth group. And I was like, okay, all right, I got this. I think February I got paid, or I either got paid from the job that I had, or the second job that I had took on. And that was enough money to pay off the fifth one, like in February. And so by April, I think it was like right before April or right when April started, I had enough money for the sixth group, because I was saving in between, and the money like that I got from the other job plus the check that came in from the job that I was working was enough for me to pay off that one and save a little bit for the next group. And so I did that, and then the next 2 months, the next 3 or 4 paychecks, I used that to pay off the last group. It took me 9 months to pay off a little over $30,000, because I was intentional, because I was willing to work extra jobs and cut out everything. I literally got so sick and tired of chicken. You don't even understand, but it was so worth it, because the relief that I felt when I didn't owe somebody anything was amazing. But I'm saying, I gave all of that example just to say that when you are winning, when you start winning at something in life, regardless of where you are, even if you want to be a millionaire, you need to celebrate where you are, because God is blessing you where you are right now. The journey is necessary for you to get to the next level. If, when I started winning, like little wins that I had, it really motivated me to do more. So every time you move towards your goal of owning a multi-million dollar business, every time you take one step to, you know, growing yourself, to healing, anything that you're doing when you're intentional about growing and learning more, educating yourself, whatever it is that you're doing, take that win, because it's just going to psychologically encourage you to do more. And then eventually, before you know it, your business will be making millions, because you stayed on the course. You were focused. You did the things that you needed to do. You didn't even realize those little things were going to help you achieve your big, hairy goal. And that's how life is. You have to really appreciate everything that God is giving you. You can never take for granted anything that God does for you in your life. I wrote a whole lot of notes, but I do have to go in 3 minutes. So, because I got this meeting for a nonprofit. So I'm going to head out soon, but there was something there was something that somebody said in a podcast earlier today, and when they said it, I heard what they said, and it kind of rang in my soul. You know, it was like one of those things that you hear people say, or you hear other people like they will mention something like that, but when this person said it, it really, like, I really heard what they said. You know, it's kind of like Tony Gaskins. When you hear him say something, it's like, oh, you know, like your friends, family members, other people could be saying stuff, and then Tony Gaskins says it, and it's like, oh, okay. I mean, yeah, like, or like, you know, it's just, it takes a specific person with a specific voice saying it the right way for you to be able to understand it. That's why I feel like for me, because I've been through things in the past, when I meet other women, that's why they're like, oh, can I talk to you about something? You know, or, you know, I don't know what to do about this. And I'm like, listen, you need to pray to God. Like, I can't give you advice about your life. I'll tell you, you know, definitely consult with God. How do you feel in this relationship? How do you feel about this decision that you're making? Is it benefiting you or is it holding you back? Do you feel like you're healthy? Are you happy in this situation? You know, and if you're leaving because it's difficult and not because you're unhappy, then definitely pray to God and see if this is the right decision, because you're not always going to be happy go lucky, rainbows and butterflies. A relationship takes work. And just because I'm single and it looks great, and I'm not saying it to toot my own horn, I'm just saying people say, well, you make it look easy. It's not easy always. There's good days and there's bad days. Most of my days are good because I'm content being single. But I also know that I don't have anything against anybody being in a relationship. You know, I feel like relationships are great when they're healthy, and you have to get healthy yourself, and you have to be willing to acknowledge your flaws. You have to be willing to die to yourself a little. You have to be willing to be able to compromise and not settle and lower yourself. You have to be the best version of yourself. And if somebody can work something out in their relationship, I think that is amazing. I don't think every person should just be single because I'm single. You know, I want everybody to be happy. And eventually, when I meet the person, hopefully other people will be happy for me too. If not, you know, oh well. But as long as God's good with it, you know. And so this is what I heard. He said, "You can't make the other person act right or want you." And I say act right because sometimes we want, you know, that family member or that friend to do the things that we want them to do. And we feel like, oh, if we could just make them do this or stop behaving like this, then they will be the perfect friend. Or, you know, in a relationship, you might want the person to change to be somebody else, or to want you in the way that you want them. But you can't make somebody do that. They have to want to do that for themselves. And it says, you're asking God for a new relationship, but you are yet to be grateful for the fact that you are in a position to have a relationship. And you keep harping on the past when you need to let it go. And I know it's hard to let go because, you know, they hurt you. I know it's hard to let go because you had aspirations and dreams, or you were invested or whatever else. But I promise you, if you're the only person invested, it's not worth it, because you are going to drain yourself dry. It is never going to be enough to feed your soul. You have to be willing to let that person go for your benefit and theirs, because although you're thinking, well, at least they won't be with anybody else, you'll never be with the person God graced for you either if you keep waiting for them. You have to know that you're worth more than that. And I know you're like, well, I did a lot of things wrong. Listen, we all made mistakes. Forgive yourself and know that you're worthy of everything God has for you. You don't have to ever settle for anything less than God's best for you. I promise you that. And I know it might be difficult and people might be telling you how soon you got to heal and move on. But listen, you take your time, but you need to let the person go. You do. It's for your benefit. You'll never be able to grow. God will never be able to send you your blessings if you are blocking your blessings. So you have to go forward. You need to realize that you survived. You made it. You asked God to get you out of that relationship or give you peace, and you have it now. Hold on to that peace. You know, whenever you are willing to let go of the thing that you're holding on to, God can bless you with so much more. I always give this example, but it's so good. It's like that picture of God with a giant teddy bear behind his back, Jesus kneeling down in front of the little girl with a giant teddy bear behind his back, and then she's holding on to this little teeny teddy bear, and it's her favorite teddy bear, and she just doesn't want to let it go. And God is like, just let it go because he has something better for you. And I know sometimes you can't imagine anything better than that. But if you're not healthy mentally, it's not good for you. If you're not at your best, doing your best, giving your best, and being treated like the woman of God that you are, or men, if you're not being respected like the man of God that you are, I promise you, God has so much better for you. You have to know your worth. And you're so much more than your body. You're so much more than the things that you can give somebody. Don't you know that God wants to bless you with everything that he has for you? All he asks is that you seek him, be obedient, serve, and be intentional. Stay focused on him. Don't worry about the things from the past because you can't go back there. That thing is not in your future. And if it is, God will spin the block. You know what I'm saying? And so, so in conclusion, when it comes to your blessings, please don't block your blessings holding on to something in the past. Please know that God has so much better for you and he wants to give you the desires of your heart, because when you are focused on him, his desires will be your desires. Know that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. And if you celebrate the little wins, eventually you will accomplish everything that you set out to accomplish in your life. And when I say focus on God first, I mean that first, because sometimes we have an idea for our lives of what we want and not what we actually need. Make sure that you consult with God and this is what he has for your life, because then you'll get everything. I mean it all. And I don't want to want for nothing. Like I want everything God has for me. And not because I feel like I'm entitled, but because God is saying he wants to bless me with it. And I want to be a gracious acceptor of any blessing that God is trying to give me. And I hope that you know just how beautiful, smart, intelligent, cute, whatever the words are, incredible that you are. You're everything God is creating you to be, and you're becoming better every single day. Don't give up on yourself. You have to keep going. I know sometimes it's hard. I know sometimes it hurts. But I promise you, if you just let it go, everything you need will be in your future.